Now sit back, relax, put on your headgear. You're waiting, but stop debating and release the highs. Just let them fly while I say what's up to grandma in the sky. Let the bass consume her place. I'm chilling in the studio, listening to Ace about platinum hits and how high to climb and how many MCs really can't rhyme. But I get a dime for the wax I press. It's all a mind state that leads to stress. Them evil spirits, but I can't hear it. Like my girl Giant told me, said you got to clear it. So I release and find my peace through a beat or some shit and dream about hits. I gotta keep my thing on straight, get my head together and wait till I get my share. At least I'm on the air.
All right, folks. Since there's no music playing right now, we're just gonna be doing a lot of talking. I'm gonna turn my fans back on because I think I can kind of edit that out and it won't be too much. It's still, even though it's in the evening time, it's still a little warm out here in the old shed of dread. So I know I can hear that in the background. But hopefully you guys can just hear me. Well, had time to go in the house, get part one of Saturday's videos posted. Got finished, rendered it out, posted it. Wasn't able to get a 4K, but we got a 2K out of it, and I think it'll look pretty good. So it's even online now as we speak. It's there to be seen. As I'm recording this here, part two, it's there already. So, that was all the workout portion. Of course, we talked about everything, all the business talk. We got it out the way. And I made myself a little challenge to myself, not to do too much repeating. So I know I said all that stuff we talked about the whole week. Matter of fact, we talked about the whole week in Friday's video. And then part one, we kind of talked about what we worked out today, that kind of workout stuff, what we did today. So now, man, we're just going to get straight to the kind of memory lane, kind of nostalgia part of these videos that I've been doing here for a while now. And I've, started to really enjoy this part of these videos that I do. For the last few Saturdays, we've been kind of waiting on something that I kind of wanted to show y'all. I kind of come across it online. And, all this stuff that I've got, folks, we've already, kind of shared with y'all. All this stuff is pretty much come from eBay. And other than eBay, it's something I purchased in a store. I seen it somewhere, and I bought it right there. Everything else is pretty much been online purchases. It's been eBay. A lot of the stuff is it's not brand new. Majority of it's not. So I'm on eBay a lot, kind of looking around for stuff. And a lot of my stuff that I've shared with you guys so far has been action figures. So, sometimes I guess they'll kind of take it upon themselves, with the algorithms deal and all that stuff, everything else that social media's got, I guess, it's incorporated in everything now. So, they kind of like these just started kind of coming across my, stuff you might like type of, little fucking section on eBay or whatever. And there was, Fisher Price Adventure People. And they looked kind of cool. It was like, to me, I was looking at it, I was like, okay, that's more of a younger kid. It's not as, as fast as advanced G.I. Joe, but, they're kind of cool looking little figures, man. They got little like airplanes and boats and shit, all kind of whatever shit they do. And then, well, okay, yeah, I'm gonna talk just a little bit more about that. But there's another one. There's something else I got to show you before we get to that. But I'll just kind of build up to that. But anyways, these Fisher Price people, they kept coming across my, the little whatever algorithm, if you want to call it that, on eBay. Stuff that may interest you, shit like that, whatever the fucking category is. And then eventually the ones that I'm gonna show y'all today popped up across there. And I had these way back in the day. And I didn't, I never knew what they was, I didn't ever really necessarily forget about them, but I didn't think about them a whole lot. They were just kind of tucked away in the back of my mind. Then when I seen them, I was like, holy shit, man. And, but that's what they were this whole time, Fisher Price Adventure People. I didn't know that, but we'll get to there's two guys. Yeah, I'll go ahead and tell you, it's two guys, and they got like a little motor vehicle, okay? So we'll get to those guys in a minute. What we're going to get to first is the figure that was kind of a forgotten, figure. I almost forgot that I had him coming because, I got him for $4, so hell, that's pretty easy to forget about, that's basically, same price as a damn soda at some, curve store nowadays. But when I seen him, I was like, hell, I had planned on getting him eventually anyways. And I seen that guy selling him, he was like for $4. I think he didn't try to sell it. This buyer or particular seller on eBay, I guess he'd been trying to sell him for a while and just get rid of it or whatever. And, nobody buying, he marked him down to $4. I was like, well, damn, man, he probably ain't gonna get no cheaper than that for the shape that he's in. So yeah, let me snag him up. But he goes with the, Rambo and the Force of Freedom universe, and also with the movie because he was in the Rambo franchise. All that he's in First Blood, most of them, I believe. And I know he's passed away now. The guy that played him, I can't call his name, the actor, but I always liked him, and he ain't show it to you. It's really good, $4. That's not too bad. That's Colonel Troutman, folks. If you don't know, from the Rambo movie. And from the Rambo cartoon, Rambo and the Force of Freedom, that is Colonel Troutman, folks. And it looks pretty good. It looks pretty close to him, pretty good figure. And, I know in the movies, I think in part 3 he kind of did some stuff, but, he was kind of, Rambo kind of carrying him, rescued him or whatever. So, in the movies, Colonel Troutman was never no really kind of an action figure guy. He didn't really do much as far as action, like Rambo did. But I did have this guy as a youngster, as a young kid. I got him maybe at the same time that I got Rambo, or maybe shortly after. But I do remember having him, and I was happy to get him. I had him, and then I had the Russian dude from Rambo Part 2. But I kind of had that same type of respect for Colonel Troutman that I did for Duke of the G.I. Joes. Because Duke wasn't some flashy, like, super cool figure. He wasn't a terrible figure, but he was kind of a plain figure. But the thing that made me respect Duke and have to go out and get his figure, and I had to get him as a kid, now I still, as an adult now, kind of a semi-collector or whatever, I do need to go get him. It's because, like, even though how plain he wasn't some swole up ass dude, real regular built and all that shit. Same way with Colonel Troutman. All the G.I. Joes fucking listened to him. They knew he was the fucking boss. And then on the other side of the coin with Colonel Troutman, in this little comparison, I guess you know, that's basically the only guy Rambo would fucking listen to. Basically, kind of the only guy Rambo, could calm Rambo down. Same way with like everybody respect all the Joes respected Duke. Even though they didn't look like much, you had to think, these guys must be fucking something, all the G.I. Joes do this motherfucker says. And this guy here is the only motherfucker that Rambo will listen to. So that brought a little level of respect with these guys. So, happy to get Chrome Trout, man. To me, that was a steal for $4. And my mouth is getting real dry. I certainly want to be able to talk properly to you guys. So, but I know, this is gonna be the last one here. I've had a couple, folks. This is gonna be the last one for tonight because I don't want to be feeling bad tomorrow. I've had 3. This will be the last one. This is for just like strictly for hydration purposes. I don't have anything else out here. My mouth's just getting dry, and I need to finish this up and get to this thing we've been trying to talk about these last 2 or 3 Saturdays. So this is the last one, I promise you, folks. I don't want to feel bad in the morning. I want to enjoy the rest of my night, even though it's kind of late. But it's all right. We're grown. I'm grown up now, so me and my wife we stay up late if we want to, man. All right, let's got the old. Oh, I wasn't good with folks, but normally sometimes it's kind of a cool thing to do. I kind of blew it there, Arrogant, kind of arrogant asshole type of guy. He'd probably like edit that out and do it as many times it took for the thing to be a good shot. But hey, look, I'm a humble guy, so I'll let you see that I just blew it right there, straight to the floor. Well, anyways, let's get to this, man. Because we've been waiting to get to it. I have, and been excited to talk about this, y'all, and share this with y'all. And I finally get to do it. Earlier, like I stated, these old Fisher Price Adventure people kept popping up across my little section on eBay where it was like they would kind of suggest stuff to you based on what you kind of was looking at, And apparently they got a lot of old figures, and these guys here, I think this little line of toys from Fisher Price was like 1974, 1975. They lasted a little past that. But that's when they kind of came out. I ain't really like looked at the little date on these guys to really make see, but it doesn't matter. I don't care. I knew this is them when I got them. And I seen them online, and they finally arrived, and I got to touch them and have them in my hand. I knew it was them. But no further ado, folks. I'll introduce them first, and then I'll kind of get to a few maybe little stories and anecdotes about them that I have. But no, like I said, no further ado. The Fisher Price Adventure people, I believe 1974, the cycling team. And look at that, man. I mean, I know. To me, that's for fish, just like, you think of Fisher Price, you think of like real simple type of little toys for little kids. Now, Fisher Price, if you look back at some of their old stuff, man, they had some fucking good stuff, man. And I did have these, and I never knew what they were. I never knew they were Fisher Price. I never thought to even look them up or anything. Of course, when I was a kid and had access to them, I never thought to look at the, because they always got like little, kind of like a stamp thing on them, like on their butts or even on the inside of their legs. Usually tells where they're made, like made in Hong Kong, 1974, shit like that. I'm sure it would have said Fisher Price on it too. But man, this even dates back before G.I. Joe for me. Very, very young. Now I was fond of them too. And I didn't have the whole set of this for for a very, very long time, but I had this guy here, this particular guy, the driver. He's built a little different. His legs are. I had that guy for a long time, man. But I had to be, a toddler when I first got these guys. And I had forgotten about the damn bike and I almost forgotten about the bike and the sidecar. I almost forgot about the little, his partner here. This was almost all I remembered about this little group right here. Cause I had that for so long and I was so young when I got it. had to be 3 or 4 years old when I got these. Now, of course, I don't remember fucking opening the package, or however the fuck I got them. My mom might have got them at a garage sale. And I don't know, but I don't remember all that shit. But I remember having them. And then when I finally seen them online and seen the whole set together, I was like, I remember the motorcycle. I remember, touching it, playing. I remembered it. You know what I mean? The sign car and all that shit. And I remember this guy. I never really forgot about him. But I remembered the whole thing as a set. Yeah, like I was saying, this dates back way before I got into G.I. Joes and stuff. And I want to just put this out there. Star Wars had like little action figures too. They're real similar to these guys. Pretty much built pretty much the same. Straight legs. They don't have all the swivel and the O-ring and pretty much the legs move, arms move. You know what I mean? Legs move, arms move, head moves. But that was fine. And I remember having a lot of Star Wars action figures. I even remember having a Han Solo, whatever the hell his damn ship was called, the Falcon Crest, whatever the fuck that was. I remember having it. It was like a play set. It was about this big. You top of it open up, and you play with it with little guys in there. I had a lot of little fucking Star Wars guys. I liked them and everything, but I think I don't really have no real strong, like, far as fondness to them. You haven't seen me go back and get any of those guys. Now, not to say that I won't. There might be some, that I go back and get. But I think more so, um, I think the adults, like my dad or mom or whoever was buying me these fucking, I think it was more so they liked Star Wars. Because back then you had to think that was Star Wars was just coming out. Nobody's seen nothing like that. So adults, everybody loved, was into that shit. If you were into that kind of shit, you fucking, Star Wars was a big deal. But I did enjoy Star Wars action figures and all that, but like, nothing will never take place at G.I. Joe. They don't, Star Wars action figures don't hold a candle. Can't hold a candle, or whatever the fuck, whatever a good phrase is. They can't fucking, they don't compare to G.I. Joe. Not saying they're not cool. I'm not trying to shit on anybody that's like a big Star Wars fan or whatever, but that's just to say that these are kind of built like same way, kind of the same figure. Now this guy that drives it, he's a little different. Now I ain't gonna pull, do too much. But I'll kind of pull him up a little bit. See how his knees are. See how he's more of a kind of got that wide. That's so he can fucking sit on the motorcycle. So each guy was built for whatever they were for. Um, glad we did part one. Oh, damn thing. Glad we did a part one and a part two today, because I knew I was going to be talking for a good minute on this. Because this was just like I don't know, it's like a big memory type of thing. I did enjoy playing. I did enjoy him as a toy, but it was nowhere. You never say that these were my favorite of all time, and nothing like that. It's just like, oh no, it's just like guess it brought back some memories. Um, But I said I have some memories tied to this, and I'll go ahead and get to it. I know I got a story I've been wanting to tell about these guys. And to me, it's a good story. It's a funny story. Especially now as an adult. I've got two sons. My oldest son is 28, I believe. My youngest son, I believe, is 26. So that's just to say that they're fully grown. That's just to say that me and my wife, we've been all the way through raising some children up through childhood. Okay, so we know what it's like. We know all the highs and all the lows, all the good times and all the pain and the asses that, young children can bring you. Of course you love them. Of course you can, they're your kids, but let's be real, folks, okay? Like little kids, you're little, you know, they can just be a pain in the ass sometimes, and they can push you to your fucking limit. It's true. But here's a story about my mother. Okay, I said all that, to it's always been a funny story to me. Even if just a few years after it happened, and I got a little older, it's kind of funny, kind of chuckle about it a little bit. Me myself personally, it's not like it was a huge story that we got around. I had to tell the story every time the family got around. It's just something that I remember. I guess I told a few people. But remember, like I said, all my children are fully grown. Me and my wife, we've been through raising them up. We know the ups and the downs. Plus, the younger years, you're trying to establish yourself. Still, whatever you're trying to do, it's kind of maybe a little tougher when you're young, getting out there in the world, and then you got kids on top of it. So you get a little stress. You get you a little stress every now and then. For a man, we'll go. You just find, to another dude, go to his backyard. Either he come to my backyard. We'll drink some beer. That's how, a lot of times we kind of handle that, the stress. And sometimes, there's some women out there in the world, that's how they handle it too. And then there's some women, I just know this because my wife, and I think she's kind of not the exact same like prototype model of my mom, but they got a lot of similarities, whether she knows it or not. And my mom is passed on now. She died in 2024. So, if I say something in present tense, I'm talking about my wife as far as like I'm making a comparison point here. But like I said, my wife might not know it, but her and my mom, they have a lot of similarities, to me anyway. But I remember when I was a young kid, this was before my brother was born. Okay. And I was 7 years older than my brother. So that means I was 7 years old when he was born. So before then, and like I said, I want to say I could have been a toddler when I come into possession of these young fellas here. So let's just say I was 4, 5 years old. That's a nice little young age, kind of be a pain in the ass, right? Okay. Now my family, me and my mom and my stepdad, that's pretty much who raised me. I was with my mom and my stepdad. Of course I had a relationship with my dad and everything like that. But I would be like a separate deal where we go visit, go visit, whatever. But like as far as day-to-day basis where I'm living, with my mom and dad, stepdad. Okay. And we weren't like every Sunday going to church, You know what I mean? Like there was a few times when we'd get on a streak and we'd be like, okay, we're going to church every Sunday. It might but it never like carried on for years and years. We just weren't every Sunday going to church. Like, every now and then, like I said, we'd get on a little streak and start going for a while. We'd always go on Christmas Eve or something like that. Like, we just weren't every Sunday just go to church. Most time Dad has some shit to do out the yard, and that's what we're gonna fucking be doing. So, you know, let's say I was 4 or 5 years old. I had to put my mom at 25, 26. Okay. One Sunday, we're living in a place called Sunrise, Mississippi, way out in the country. Probably ain't been out there too long. If my memory serves me correctly. And I don't know, whatever reason, I remember a lot of times us having to be quiet because I think Dad, he was on night shift, so we'd have to kind of be quiet during the day. Or at least there was a period of time like that during our little tenure out there at Sunrise, um, Mississippi, of course. The one Sunday, I'm talking about this way out of the country, folks. Let me just talk about Sunrise a little bit. I kind of had like little fond memories of it. I kind of like it. There's a lot of spooky shit happened out there too. Maybe I'll talk about that one day. But it was just like way out in the country. We had one neighbor. It was a farmer, and he pretty much owned this property that we were just living on and renting from. And we didn't have cable or nothing like that. We had a little antenna. We got like 2 channels, PBS and some other bullshit. I remember having a tire swing and all that, But anyways, just to give you an idea what Sunrise was. But living in a place called Sunrise at the time. One Sunday, Mama's gets me dressed, tells me, whatever the fuck, I just know we're fitting to go to church. And that's just not something we normally do. As a kid, I'm like, well, what the fuck, I guarantee I'm thinking, I don't want to fucking do that, As an adult, I'm looking back, with a different mindset because I've gone through raising children. I'm not a woman, but I got to observe my wife, as she, you know, that through the years as we're raising our children. I know some women sometimes they're having a rough week, you know, end of the week, Sunday morning, I want to go to church, get some kind of encouragement, it's been a tough week, whatever's going on, things just been tough when, you and your husband arguing a couple of times, whatever, whatever the case may be, you're having a tough week, you want to go just uplift yourself something, go to the church, get a little word, encouragement. So, looking back as with adult eyes, that's the deal, right? Pretty much, And so you got to take me, the dad's there, he's trying to sleep. So we get there, of course, I'm a little 4 or 5 year old kid, She knows I'm not going to sit there and listen to none of that. You know what I mean? So I got my guys, right? And I just had my guys. That was it. I remember it was just my guys. Just didn't have a motorcycle, or the sidecar. Just had my guys. Because a lot of times, and I just have them fighting and shit, whichever fucking action figure it was, man. It could be Star Wars, whoever, He-Man, whatever. I'd have them fight or whatever. So, she's trying to get that word, get that encouragement. I can, I can't remember it like I'm sitting there watching it on TV, but I do remember it. And I can kind of fill in the gaps, knowing my mom and knowing myself. And I actually do remember her a few times telling me to be quiet. And in my mindset as a little kid, I'm like, how can I play? You told me I could play, you know what I mean? And she's like, just don't make the noise, and I'm in my mind, I was like, I'm trying, I was like, there's no way that's happening. I'm trying to be quiet. And I'd start off, but eventually it's going to be, you know what I mean? So it just kept, I know that probably just kept going a few times and cycled around a few times. And, I guess she just had enough, the tough week on top of her not being able to come in there and get nothing close to no word of encouragement because the whole time she, trying to quiet me down or whatever. And I'm quite sure, I kind of remember a little bit about that church, a lot of older folks, they were kind of like stern, Southern Baptist, quiet down, you know what I mean? So eventually she just snatches me up and storms on out of there. We're fucking leaving, damn it, And I'm like, I'm kind of like a little pissed off. I'm being snatched up, and I'm like, okay, at least we're fucking going through the door and leaving out this motherfucker. I'm like, after I get over the little, it don't take me but a second to get over and getting snatched up by mom, whatever. Uh, then we're out in the car, I'm like, yeah. And I guess she had just done boiled over, man. And it was this guy, man. I remember it was the demise of this young man right here. He never had a name. I think they do have names, looking back and kind of getting into the Fisher Price adventure people lore and all that shit. I think they actually do have names, but, I never, I didn't fucking know nothing about that, of course. So, but I never gave this guy a name. This guy never even had a name. And, we're back in the car, right? And I guess she's just done boiled over. And it's my fault, man, I know, some people might look at this or hear this story and be like, oh God, how could she traumatize her child like she should have control over herself? Fuck all that, man. I've been there, bro. I've been there, sister, mama. I held no grudges against my mom. I probably did right then when I was like the 4 or 5 year old little kid. But the demise of this young man right before my eyes, boy. We was in the car, hell, I fucking, we're going, we're leaving, I'm happy. I can make full noise now, play with my guys, get in the car. It's like, give me that fucking man. It was him. You know, I know it was him. Okay. Because he was gone after that day. One leg in the right hand, one leg in the left hand. Snap! I can remember just like uh, the look on her face, you know. And I'm not saying this to be like, I can't believe my mother, you know, well, fuck that shit. I deserve that shit, bro. Okay. I look back on it laughing now because uh but I know she just had fucking had enough. That's the only time she ever did something like that, but then I guess that's probably why it always stuck out to me. And it was always, to me, it's always been kind of funny. Like I said, nowadays some liberal, you know, little jackass will be like, that's child abuse. You probably scarred that boy. Shut up, you know. To me, that's a fucking funny story. You know, mama got pushed to her limit, and that was the end of this old fella here. I never got to even give him a name. But I remember, I remember that shit. It was like vivid, you know, that part, like when she's like, "Give me that fucking man." I started fucking crying immediately. But you know what? Looking back on it, man, I deserved that. You know, I deserved it. And all the damn toys my mama bought me over the fucking years, so fucking what? You know, to me that's a fucking funny story. I'm sorry if somebody else don't get the humor in it, and they'll be like, that's it's kind of a warped thing to think about. You know, shut up. You know, lighten up. Get over it, man. But that's a little story I've been wanting to tell about these guys. You know, but after that, you know, um, after I saw the demise of this young man right before my very eyes, that's what we were left with. I remember still having it, and I'm sure I still got some use out of it because I know I had like Star Wars guys. Like I said, they were all built like this. This is the same as the Fisher Price people, so they probably fit right on in there. But then, you know, over the years, started getting whittled down. Then it was just this old fella here. I still didn't have a name for him, you know. Just this old fella here in the motorcycle, and this motorcycle is actually kind of cool, man. To me, it is. I don't know. And then eventually, the old motorcycle disappeared. Some kind, it just went away, went somewhere, you know. But this guy stuck around. But then eventually, we were left with this guy. But then eventually, this guy went away. Right. Another little small story. I'll be kind of brief with it because we had like 30 something minutes. For whatever reason, I'm at my granny's house. I'm a little older now, you know, probably 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there. I can't remember the exact age I was and time it was. Because remember now, folks, I had these guys, him and the others, the motorcycle and the other, his partner there, at like toddler ages. So this is years and years, this is years later. And I don't know what made me think about it. But my granny, you know, my mama's mama, that was granny. We were at her house. Her front porch is like, you know, porch, and then it comes down, and it's all concrete, you know. And then the steps going up, it's all concrete. So where the steps meet, the front of the porch is like that little crack right there. You know, if you ain't got a fucking weed eater, it's kind of like a little mound of grass will kind of start forming right there. I don't know what the fuck made me think to dig behind, pull that little mound of grass up, but I did. And there he was, man. And that motherfucker had been in that little mound of grass for some years, dude. But I remember I think I got to have been like 9, 10, 11 years old when I come back. And I don't even know what made me think to do that. But I pulled that little mound of grass up and he was in there. And he came back home with me, you know, and he rejoined the force of all the fucking, you know, little action figures that I already had. Hell, it's the same size as G.I. Joe. You know, I can't necessarily say this guy was made an honorary G.I. Joe like Tony Tanner was, but he was paid his respects, you know. Because at some point, you know, course, like I've told you guys this, I'm a G.I. Joe guy. That was my number one favorite toy. Okay, so I stuck with them probably all the way up until the age where you kind of like finally fizzle out of playing with toys. You know, you go on and do another shit. Um, but eventually, you know, when I was young, it was like, you know, whatever, you know, you were out there in the dirt building little huts and fighting wars and shit, you know. But eventually I got to the age where I started liking wrestling, you know. Started becoming kind of a wrestling fan. So I wanted to play wrestling, you know, but like all the wrestling figures fucking suck. Because the ones from the 80s, the older ones, they were just clumps of fucking rubber. I mean, they would look like the fucking guy, but they were just whatever pose that was in. They saw that you couldn't fucking move them. So who the fuck, you know, I wasn't a collector then. I was a fucking kid that wanted to play some goddamn toys. And you couldn't move that motherfucker around or do nothing with it. So I didn't give a shit about those, you know. And then I think and those were older, you know, wrestling figures. Before I got into wrestling, I actually gave a shit about wrestling. But when I kind of did become like more of a bigger little bit of a fan and wanted to play wrestling, they did have these other figures, but you know, they weren't all that fucking great neither, guys, to be honest with you. Their legs didn't fucking move and their upper body would fucking do something, but you know, it was one of them deals where you know that little you got a little clicker on the back of him and or you fucking mash some shit on his back and it's like, oh, super slam, you know. That was just bullshit little toy. So eventually I kind of got to where I like just made my own wrestlers up and they were all G.I. Joes, you know what I mean? I think I even had made a little wrestling ring for them, steel cage and all that shit. And of course they got all, you know, had their own wrestler names. Some of the guys I think might have kept their names. I thought their names were cool. I would keep them, but they all got new names, you know, wrestler names and shit. You know, it kind of, you know, just to give you an idea, you know. Just say that to say this, you know, like uh this guy here, he never, like I said, he didn't make honorary GI Joe status like Tony Tanner did, but like you know, these guys I do think they did have names, him and his partner, but I didn't know nothing about that shit. So like I said, he didn't make honorary GI Joe status, but you know, I gifted this, I named this guy, you know, he become part of my little wrestling kind of, you know, but I would play wrestling with the fucking G.I. Joes or whatever. He become one of those guys. His name, and he was, of course, you know, just look at it. Of course, he's a jobber, you know. But I still got to pay him his respects, and I gave him a name. His name was Willie Rose. And he was a jobber. But look at the neck on this boy. See how hard that boy's neck can come down? He could take a power bomb, you know. He was a hell of a damn jobber. He could put a guy over, man. But yeah, I've really been waiting to show you guys this, because it sparked so many early memories for me. And then I also thought it was kind of cool how this guy, and I don't know how this guy finally went away, but man, this guy here, because these were from the 70s, man. And just in my youth, you know, he probably was out there many years, man. And that little shit with him being stuck in the fucking grass for like however many fucking years, I'm about rediscovered it. I don't know, that was kind of a cool story. And I don't know, it was just to me, I was really fond of these guys. I thought, and I think it's just like the memories that they kind of stir up, you know, bring back what made me so fond of them. But when I seen them, you know, like I said, but eBay kind of pushed them across my little stuff you might be interested category or whatever the fuck it is, you know. And I was like, wow, man, I got to get those. So it took me a little minute to get it all here, and I had to get it a little piece by piece. But I think these guys are in really good shape, and I was happy to get these guys, bring these guys into the collection here. So, not to forget Colonel Troutman, you know, for today. We went pretty strong on this video. Hopefully, maybe we can get a 2K video out of this. I don't know. We'll do the best we can do. But Right now, we're going to sign out with Colonel Troutman in the Fisher Price Adventure People Cycle Team. Give you a final look at them there. Well, not a final look. I'll give you another look after we sign off here. Man, it's almost 12 now, folks, but I don't know, man. I've enjoyed this. I've been waiting on it, and we finally got it, and I enjoy doing it. So when I leave you here, I'll kind of take you out with a few shots from the shelf up there, and of course, these guys go up there. Of course, Colonel Troutman's going up there with Rambo. These guys will also go up there with because it's kind of a miscellaneous action figure, uh, little kind of a biosphere, you know. And I consider those guys action figures, so got to pay them their respect. But yeah, like I said, I'll leave you here, I'll take you out with a few shots of the shelf, you know. Yeah, man, I really enjoyed this, guys, and um, I guess hey, let's wrap it up already, folks. Till the next time I see you, like I always tell you, take it easy.